Let's just go into what you don't do. You can point to the door, but the door stays open, so people are free to leave. You can't coerce attendance. You can't punish someone from stepping out. You maybe would have noticed people might have needed to leave to do something. Didn't stop it. Adults, something to think about. You can't pick favorites. And you cannot worry about how you're perceived as the facilitator. Okay? This is a tricky one, especially if you're sitting as a company between your company and an enterprise and you have to be a facilitator with your counterpart. It's really tricky for the both of you to do because you both do have vested interests in the companies that you represent. And so what do we say to overcome this? If we go down to I think we've got to, let's go to the first time facilitators paradox first. Here we go. You might have to die a little to achieve belonging. The only person that can die in the facilitation is the facilitator. There's probably a few things that you saw me do in my group and you're like, Jesus Christ, how is that going to happen?
My group saved me when I was using language that was way over the top. And my
I think mine might have.
Came right in and it was like, all right, hold it. Lower it down.
Yeah.
So the fact of the matter is that for me was a sustaining, not a reviewer.
Yeah.
I didn't feel rebuked. But I had to own the fact that I
right.
just used the word.
Yes. So, and this is a good way of putting it. And sort of, if you do it right, that's what happens. The only way to give the group the gathering they came for is to stop needing it to go well for you as the facilitator. So yet again, letting go of the outcome and being okay with you can take yourself out to get the group where it needs to go and the group will be fine and they will revive you and bring you back, right? But you can't revive yourself. And so if we go back up to what to fall back on, if you do that and you maybe did it at the wrong time. As a facilitator, if you do something wrong, you can say something like, I'm going to stop us, something is off and I think it's my fault. And it's the easiest way to help everyone remind one that you're actually a facilitator, and that actually gives you a bit of grace because it's a hard thing to do to get 10 people, 8 people working together at once. And you can just say why, you could say, can we go back? It's the fastest way to resetting the room without making anyone defensive because you've owned it. And remember, you can die and you can be revived. But if you take anyone else out, it's end game for the gathering. So it's just never worth it. No matter how defensive you get, it's just easy to go, it's on me, I've run it, I've missed something, something's off, can we take a pause and move on? Any questions for those in the room on the facilitation for Kemper? Yeah, shoot.
How big should the circle be?
Oh, shit.
Listen, there's one thing to consider.
Great question.
It's a great question, and it's the question when you have a sponsor who wants you to facilitate a meeting. The old adage is the same number of people it takes to be warm around a fire. Now, what that means is obviously the fire size, but think about it in terms of the fire size. If the fire is a good, healthy fire, it's 8 people, it's 10 people. But when you start to talk about 14 people, it better be a bigger fire. And so what makes a bigger fire in a meeting? It has to be a bigger convening.
Yeah, longer time.
The number of people is a crucial thing that no one ever gets right, but you would much better to err on the side of too few than too many. Yeah. Because too many is just going to lead the facilitator into a cat herding kind of trying to keep every voice in.
Yeah.
I'm going to do 5 to 8.
And
above that, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, the sweet spot is 8, just for the record. The sweet spot is perfect number. Keep an eye on the balance of gender. The best meetings are always equal gender. Always. 100% of the time. They're equal gender. And that means if you're 9 women and 1 man, or you're 9 men and 1 woman, they are not as effective as 5 and 5.
Yeah. The other thing too is you just extend the time. Like people actually stay engaged, so we were at like 7 or 8. We 8?
Like, yeah, I think 8.
Yeah, so for 2 hours that works, but you couldn't do 8 in an hour to an hour and 30. The 2 hours was probably required for 8 people. But it's a great question. Anything over like 8 though?
And the reason why it's a great question is because you are already thinking ahead to how do I curate this experience for maximum participation, maximum listening. And so the issue of the number, you'll often find your sponsors, or whoever it is, want to add people. And you have to start being as a facilitator that says we've got 12. If you add anybody else, you have to take someone away. It's just that kind of dynamic. So well done. Great question.
Yeah. Okay.
And
Second question, go for
one
it.
that I think is probably relevant to the group is also, how do you handle where there's sort of an initial conflict of facts? So, for example, this one, I felt it was a little less structured, the way we gathered information. I think you could have had some prepared, for example. And so when either of you try to do that, but yeah, how do you handle that where it's like, we need a shared understanding before we go into this?
Sure.
And there can be follow-up questions that just like, hey, you gotta read 2 pages or whatever.
Right. Kemp can answer how he does it, but I just like, if there is a reading document, I assume that no one's read it, and I'm like, let's read. And I just wait. And then I start the facilitation from the circle again. But the thing I found with any executive, this is a military thing, an Amazon thing, you can do as much pre-work as you can, but no one ever reads it, really, until you get them in the room, and it's awkward, and I just sit there and I just look. I go 15 minutes, ask any questions. Did you find something you don't understand? If not, read in, put your notes down, and let's get ready. Kemp?
I think you're just assessing the person. So for me today, the way in which we started, which was a very unorthodox kind of everybody shooting questions that went on long enough for you to say, hey, at what point have we learned enough? She's a pastor. And I knew that capacity as a pastor was group oriented and surfacing this. I'm just going to say about it. Yeah, I think it's a great point.
Any other questions on facilitation? Yeah.
One thing that I really enjoyed is Stephen came in, he had a pretty clear idea of what he wanted. I predict that you already had a sense that the focus was too narrow, and you did a lot of things without discrediting Stephen, without pushing against him.
Sure.
To try and step by step almost expand, force that conversation to expand.
Yeah.
You seem to have a process. Maybe you share the 3 points of your process of this kind of a thing to, expand the thinking before actually then, diving in.
That we haven't shared already?
Like in the process of how you do it.
Right at the start?
Yeah. Like you sort of...
Can I just give it an orientation, and I'll tell you what I did? I didn't try to narrow. I just tried to clarify. So narrow is like I've got a perspective. I had 0 perspective, and by the end of it, I still have 0 perspective. That's just my job. I have to remain neutral. So I can't have any bias like an interview and come in and go, look, this is what I think about colleges. I had to hold myself back because I put the thing on the board first. I'd be like, whoa, easy, caffeine boy. But, I'm in a very fundamental place where I could drive the whole thing the way I wanted, right? And this is the tricky bit, because you're going to find yourself in a similar place with a founder with an unfair advantage. So my job is to make sure I create the circle. One part of creating the circle is making sure that we are on the right problem. A big part about getting everyone on the right problem is just making sure the person that's presented the uncomfortable truth has the first opportunity to declare it. So that's the first thing we did. Then we allowed everyone to share their thoughts on it. That was the second thing we did. How does that land with you? Then we came back to the counterpart and we said, do you want to change your answer? Should we change our answer? That was the third component. And then what we did once we had that answer is I allowed you then to have clarifying questions on, is this the right magic wand question? So once we clarified the uncomfortable truth and we had agreement, then we clarified the question. We went around, we had disagreements, and then we went back and then disagreed and commit. So that's when the circle was complete. And so I think that's what you're asking, what I did. But none of that, I just want to suggest, none of that was narrowing. I would say it was just making sure the circle was complete. Because if I was narrowing, I would be on, Steve, you're not listening to all these questions about people. Do you really want to put people in there? Like, I think you should put people in there. That would be narrowing. But going around and just saying, now that you're hearing these things, do you want to change your answer? Does everyone agree? Do you think we should evolve it? That is just making sure everyone's had an ability to step into the circle, say their piece, say why they're here. And then before we step off as one, is this the right grid square? Like, are we going to go here? Okay, let's go. That's all.
That's a good process.
Yeah.
But that's a facilitator, like the facilitator of a subject or learning.
That's what we're doing.
That's not an agenda, that isn't like pointing, but that's really what a facilitator does versus a professor or a teacher.
Sure.
There's differences. He said narrowing, and you're saying, well, I was just asking questions, but the facilitator asks questions.
Sure.
And they lead, they don't have an agenda, but they lead their participants by using questions.
Right.
I'm just endorsing.
Oh, okay. Yeah, like that's why we call this a facilitator. Your job is to become a facilitator in shared work when you set this up with a counterpart versus being a player. So if you're good at this, you actually bring someone from your team to represent your side in order to facilitate the discussion.